iconic, Grammy Award winning producer, engineer, Joseph Puig.
So it's very difficult, obviously, in this environment to really hear the difference between small things, little things. So I've got this set up where the jump is fairly dynamic, fairly aggressive, so you can really hear the difference. But I think what might be really great, if you guys are interested, is I'll show you a little bit about this, but more of a Q&A of what you'd like to know about anything, whether it's the Waves plugins or I don't care what it is. Anything I can do to impart information, I'd like to do. So I'll show you now just what it sounds like with the plugins and group all off and all on. The initial concept of this particular series was that as our business has changed, right, and with the implosion of digital coming into our lives right now, records are being made almost everywhere but the commercial record studio. And they're also being made by not necessarily quote-unquote engineers, right? They're musicians, So when I was designing these plugins, I was picturing in my mind a guy in his bedroom, with a guitar in his lap, a Nord here, his LE system here, or maybe a full-blown system, a Moog that his grandmother found on the weekend, in a garage sale that he's all excited about, right? And a few other little keyboards here and there. And he's really primarily a writer, and he's making, demos that are really, really great. But the problem is that because he's not an engineer, because he didn't grow up in that world, he doesn't know necessarily sometimes exactly how to get the sound he wants that the quote-unquote big guys get, right? And not only that, he shouldn't. His real talent is coming up with what really matters, which is the song, right? And it's great that we have all this here in terms of technology and sound and everything that is, but we all know that the song is the most important thing. And we see like Lord or come along, a little girl that's from Australia that actually kills the biggest artist in the world, or we watch the girl that's from England sell 10 million records, Adele. It has nothing really to do with any of this but the song. So in my mind, I thought I'd like to be able to make something that when these guys are creating, they have an immediate go-to, it's fast and it's easy, and they don't have to think about pulling down the menu and then seeing EQ and going, oh my god, there's like 25 choices, and I read in EQ magazine this, and I heard that so-and-so did that. Oh, do I put the compressor before? Do I put it afterwards? Do I need a compressor? What is a compressor? Instead of going through all of that, which takes you totally away from like the creative, excited moment, I would wanted to have something that gets them in the ballpark really fast. And not only gets them in the ballpark really fast, for instance, if you look at the plugin here, I just got this one up right now, but not only does it get them in the plugin really fast, it also allows them to change it later. Because one of the things that happens when you're creating is maybe you get an idea of what you think it should be, right? And then later you're like, oh, now that this has changed and that's changed, the key of the song's changed, maybe you've changed the style of it, etc. You want to be able to change the way the record feels quickly and easy, right? So this is really more designer, sound designer. And if you look at my plugins as a sound designer, you look at it totally different. There's not delays, there's not reverbs for the most part. Those are easily to get. It's more about sculpturing the sound and be able to change the sound quickly, so it's hard to tell in this environment, but if I was, for instance, I could take the bass drum that's here and very quickly turn it into something that sounds like John Bonham or something that sounds like an 808, same sample, right? So that as you went along and you created the record, you could decide whether or not you wanted to change that sound, because now it needed to, because the song had changed what it was, the face of what it was. So I'll show you here, just a real quick off and on, you can hear how it changes the sculpture. I'll start with it off. Again, it's hard to hear this environment, but you can hear it immediately. It'll change. Those are just, I didn't really do any adjustments. Those are just the presets that are there. A couple volume things just because But if you were a musician and you were to turn that on, I could show you one individual thing. If you were to turn it on, you'd be like, oh, that's good enough, I'm there. Great, create. And you stay in that creative space. That's the idea of what it is. And then if you want to really get into, really modify and go in and tweak it, you can. And also the last thing I'll say about this is you'll notice that the kind of things I chose, terminology like punch, tone, attitude, ambience, you know, things that musicians fully understand what they are. Space, attack, attitude, presence, magic, not 10 hertz, not 25 hertz, because I think that means you hit them 25 times. It needs to be like very easy, like what is this? You know, it's very simple to understand. Oh, attack, sustain, attitude, punch, oh, sub, you know what that is, you know, verb, etc. So I'm going to open this up since I have a very, very, very limited time here. Is there anybody have any Q&A? How are we doing the Q&A? You walking up with the mic?
As a mix engineer, when you receive like a session, what are some things that you look for to help you progress quicker? Or what are the things you have your intern change for you to make it so that you can easily read it?
There's some people who get the sessions and immediately have them modified by their assistant. In other words, there's a list, a required list of what they want done. I personally don't like working that way. My personal choice is hearing what the artist who created it actually intended and what they were thinking, because unlike tape, this is really a photograph. Pro Tools session is a photograph of what the people have been working on, and every day they've turned it on and it started exactly where they were the last time, and keep working on it, keep working on it, keep working on it. So to ignore their picture, ignore what they're thinking, I don't think makes sense. I would like to hear what they had in mind and then take it to the next level.
Is there any session prep that you would like to get from, like, if they have an engineer working on a session that makes your life easier though?
The most important thing is the labeling. You know, it can be really, really a nightmare, and not a bunch of playlists. They can easily, by accidentally, switch. We've all seen that happen. That's a nightmare. Especially now that people don't attend sessions. Now everything is sent via MP3, or you send it, or whatever you're sending it, and so they're not there. So a mistake is very easy to happen. There's no one there listening to go, oh, wait, that's not the vocal. That's how that happened. That's always a nightmare.
That's always perplexed me about this particular song. It's really, really intimate and close, but it doesn't feel starved for space or ambience. And whenever I try that, you know, maybe I'm sending something to an aux with some reverb at like -15 because that's what I saw somebody do on YouTube or something, but it doesn't do that. What's kind of your approach to get something to sound close and small and tight, but not weird and dry?
It's a very complex question.
Take all the time you need.
And a very complex answer. You know, the thing to always keep in mind is that our minds, everything is relative, right? Something's on the left, something's right, something's black, something's white, something's close, something's far. So really, it's a matter of not necessarily the particular sound that you want to sound a certain way, but like how are you framing that sound to make you perceive that sound the way you want it to be perceived. I think that's probably the fastest, quickest way to answer that question. You know what I mean? So if you had something like a vocal that was real dry, for instance, and a lot of reverb on a bunch of stuff, the vocal would be that much closer to you. The other thing that's very, very important, and this is my personal pet peeve, and I've talked about it a million times ad nauseum, but the most important frequency to me is the mid-range, right? I know that everyone's obsessed about the bottom end. Everyone wants to, you know, shake the building, make the coolest bottom end ever. It's all bottom, 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 bottom. But the only thing that's in common to every speaker system in the world is mid-range. You know, whether it's my iPhone, my car, my Ring device, my Samsung, you know, the grocery store, whatever it is, there will be mid-range, right? One. Two, the mid-range is also where the description and the attitude and the soul of where the sound lives. You know, so the scrape on the violin, the crack on the snare, the cry in the voice, that's not 2 hertz, low, low, low frequency, and that's not 25K high, high, high frequency. That's mid-range. So the mid-range intelligibility and getting that right will also do exactly what you just said, where you'll feel like something, whatever it is very, very present. That's a function of the mid-range. And a lot, honest, a large part of that too is that 300 hertz to 1K area, which is potent, dangerous place. Very easy to get lost, very easy to screw up. But you've got to really concentrate in that area if you really want to get that sort of 3D element that 70s records have. Now, one thing that the 80s, when the 80s came, became the C word, right? Compression. And like everything, when everyone discovered compression, they sometimes went way too far with it because they got excited about what it did, right? Though compression is the best thing ever because it's the only thing that you can actually move time and feel with, which is fantastic. But it's also going to get you in a lot of trouble, right? So I would suggest if you really want to get understanding of this, go back and listen to some 70s records, you know, like Elton John records, some of those classic 70s records, and listen to how they put things. And then keep in mind, oh, if I put a compressor on everything, and everything's on 10, then there's nothing close, there's nothing far, there's nothing to the left, there's nothing to the right, it's all in the same place, so you never get the feeling that you want because everyone's screaming for the front. Does that make sense? It's the best way to know how to explain it in this environment real quick.
Can you elaborate on when you were trying to EQ, you said between 900 and 1K, or sorry, 300 and 1K. Can you give us some kind of help working on those? Like what are you looking for, Bud? Or
I'll try. That's a little bit tough to really answer, but let me just sort of fake it for a minute. Very early in my career, I remember Bob Ludwig said to me that 700 hertz is the potent frequency. That was the exact word he said. And it was also a frequency that a producer named Scott Litt loved. He really loved that frequency. The thing you have to keep in mind is that as you start to get towards 1K, you're really starting to get to actual level, right? Actual volume in a sense. So your ear starts thinking, oh, it's better because it's louder, because the ear will always think that, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind, that when you go up higher, that you can get tricked by the level. To the 600 area, that's the projection area. That's the area that, if you listen to Stone Temple Pilots records, for instance, Brendan O'Brien, very healthy, Chad Blake, Bill Pettrill, very healthy in that area. They own that like no one else. They own that particular area. That's another way to learn is you find guys that you like and you forget what they're really good at and you steal from each one of them. Because everyone's got something they do great. No one's a master of all of it, no matter what anyone says. So like those three guys, if I was you want to understand that frequency, get Chad Blake, Sheryl Crow record, look up Bill Pettrill, and I forgot the third person I said. He was also, all three of them are very good at that. Brendan O'Brien, very good at that low mid-range area. That's the best way to do is go listen to it. That's the projection area. That's the area that will make things sound loud on computer speakers and on big systems.
When you're mixing, how do you balance your mix between what sounds good on the monitors and what sounds good that the average listener listens to, such as laptop speakers or iPod headphones? How do you find that balance and make it work on both types of systems?
Mid-range. If you get the balance right, it doesn't matter what you play it on. The same thing I just said about the song, which is the most important thing, right? The next important thing after the song in our world is balance. If you can't balance, forget it. Like forget, it doesn't matter how cool the bass drum sounds. It doesn't matter what the cool delay is on the vocal. None of that matters one iota. It's all about balance. So probably the best balancer in the world is a guy named Glenn Johns. It's the one that we all learn from. We all worship Glenn Johns. Any of us will tell you Glenn Johns is the man. He's Yoda. He's the first one in the lineage. Listen to how he balanced Led Zeppelin and the Eagles and Rolling Stones and the Who. Very, very, very well balanced. When the balance is right and the mid-range integrity is right, it'll work on anything. Guaranteed.
When you mix, do you mix at a low volume, or is it better for you to just, or what do you prefer?
You know, I think it really matters the kind of music you're working on, right? So if you're mixing a dance record, right? part of the amplifier working hard and the speaker working hard is part of the sound that matters, because that's how it's going to be heard, right? It's going to be bumping in a club, and it is pushing the hell out of it. You can see the red lights on the amplifiers. You can see the tweeters about ready to come out of their sockets, right? So, on that kind of record, you really want to feel what happens when you push it really hard. Is there some kind of a low sub-frequency or something that it doesn't like when it gets up to that high SPL, right? You have to pay attention to that. When you're doing more pop records, rock records, in my mind, or country records, or even jazz records, a modest level is a good level to listen at. And then when it comes to real serious decisions about pitch, time, and balance, low. Because you want to take the sound of the room out of the picture. You don't want the reflections of the room to be telling you something that's not really real. You don't want your ears to fatigue, right? If you're really good at what you do, you learn to listen with your whole body. You learn that when your arms are on the console, that's telling you something. The speaker's talking to the console, it's talking to your body, it's talking to your feet. If you're checking a bass drum, for instance, a bass drum phase, an example of that, right? If a bass drum's out of phase, you can actually like put it in phase and go, oh, whoa, I feel the bass drum on my feet now. I don't necessarily hear it louder. It doesn't sound, the meters aren't moving harder, but like I feel it in my foot. It's in phase. That's using your body, right? So you have to use your body, listen to things at different levels, listen to what the amplifiers and what the speakers are telling you. They're all talking to you. It's a matter of learning how to interpret what they're telling you and what it means and how to fix it. It's hard to answer that much more detail than that here.
Have you ever turned in a mix and then later on heard the final mastering and, you know, have you ever been like, oh, you know what, this actually changed a lot of what I had initially done in the mix?
Yeah, unfortunately, more times than not. Because the truth of the matter is, if you think about the mastering guys, and there's a handful of them, right? Basically, let's say they're mastering 27. I shouldn't say this in public, but I'm going to. They're mastering 27 to 30 records in a month. The chances of them getting one or two that are great are very, very high, very, very, very high. And probably those one or two came in where they could go like, look, mom, no hands, like, don't fuck it up, right? That's the real truth. So a lot of them go in with the attitude of, I have to like save this, rescue mission. It shouldn't be rescue mission. At this point, with the way digital is and the plugins and what we're doing with the stereo bus and everything that we have and the tools in our hands, if it gets to them, they have to rescue it. It actually should be just remixed. That's my opinion. And it doesn't need to be louder. They don't need to get crazy. It should be right when they get it. The mastering should be part of the production, not part of the repair.
I wanted to know what your opinion was on all of the analog emulation that especially Waves is really doing a lot with and doing really well. Can you kind of comment on that trend, where it's been and where you think it's going, how important it is for you to have that analog emulation?
Well, okay, it's beyond important, without a shadow of a doubt. But the one thing to keep in mind is that few of us are spoiled and we have a lot of the original pieces, right? Initially, when this first came along, I listened to tons of them and I just thought that it was retarded. It's like, okay, so you just took off highs and added some low bottom and it's like, that's tape? I don't think so. It's much more complex than that. Waves has been the only company, and is the only company, that has the ability to actually properly take something like that and model it and make it work. So what they did with Kramer is fantastic. The EMI stuff is beyond brilliant. Beyond brilliant. There's a particular product manager at Waves called Mike that is beyond a genius. And he's the one, probably out of everybody's the most brilliant man in terms of capturing what the soul, the character, and the attitude of what that is, to the point of almost getting fired more than once. Because he just won't say no until it's right. And so it's that passion, that's what it takes. I really stand behind Waves that way. Honestly, truly, there's no one even comes close. And that tape simulation or tube simulation or the older equipment simulation will become more and more important as we move farther and farther and farther ahead in the future, because a lot of the gear that we like simply just won't be fixed because they don't know how or they don't have the parts.
Do you have a favorite story when you, as a young upcoming mixer, had like an epiphany where suddenly it all kind of made sense and the story kind of revolving around that?
I think the only stories that come to mind immediately is a few times times I've had in my life where the artist has reacted to a song not from an engineer or perspective, but from an emotional perspective. So one real fast one would be a guy named Tricky, black artist, right? Who I remember when I played him the mix, he pushed back and he said, you know, everyone says to me that I'm sexy, my music is sexy, and that I'm dangerous, and I'm really like aggressive and hard. And I always get in my bus and I leave the gig and I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, I have kids, I'm not aggressive, I'm not sexy, I'm not like going out with a lot of different women. I pretty much just have one woman in my life. This is the first time I've actually heard my music back and went, oh, I get it. Now I know what they're talking about. To me, that's what it's about. When you can have that, or a moment I had with Sheryl Crow where a bunch of people mixed the song, it was given to me, I was number 4. I played her for 3 times in a row. After the 3rd time, she fell on the floor crying because she finally heard what she heard in her head. She didn't talk about the bass drum sound, she didn't talk about the cool reverb on something, or what the backbeat sounded like, or what the guitars were like. She was crying because that's what she heard in her head. To me, that's epiphany. That's what's like, thank you very much, you just did your job, in my opinion. The song, again, is the power.
Perspective on the overall mix and feel of the mix, so that you're not really focused on one or a couple of instruments, you don't get lost in different instruments.
Yes, one, listen to other things, which is again very, 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 very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. But a lot of breaks. The best thing you can do about like walking away, getting on the phone, forgetting about it, allows you to leave it up overnight. If I'm mixing a whole album, I literally will just go after each song until I'm sick of it. Maybe 45 minutes, like real quick, boom, 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 45 minutes done, 30 minutes, 20 minutes done, boom, 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 all through 10. Then go back to the first one. Now I'm on the 2nd day, and I'm starting at that place. And I keep going back and forth, building on each, getting a feel for the whole record, and putting the whole thing together so it has an integrity to it, and something that's together, as opposed to the old style where you stayed on one song forever, 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 3 days, 4 days, 1 day, whatever it was, right? This is the way it works better. So that's how I keep my perspective.
What's your technique when it comes to getting a vocal to be present in a song, but not too loud? Like perfect blended, but nice and there.
There's different levels to think about when you think about the level of vocal in the record, right? There's how loud the low end is in the voice. There's how much there's a tap. That's one kind of level, right? And so you can sometimes get a lot of sibilance or attack on a vocal so much that the ear perceives it actually louder or lower depending on how you do it than it really is, right? Again, that area, that 200 area, 600 area, that lower chest, warmth, things that the Neve give you for free, right? This is why we all like the 1073, because it's like free, it gives you that free. Those are the things that matter, like balancing how much the attack has, the attack of the voice is, to how much the lower mid-range is. That will affect how the ear perceives how loud the voice is. That's the simplest version. It's much more complex than that, but it's the best I can do in this environment.
I'm a Nashville CCM guy, and I know you spent some time in that world back in the day. Do you have any thoughts, things you like or don't like about the genre now, musically? Are you familiar at all, really?
Yeah, I am familiar with it, and actually had some conversations with a couple guys actually 2 weeks ago about it. I think it's come a long, long, long ways, like really long ways. The production value in a lot of it is shockingly good, without a doubt. You know, if you think about what U2 is, it's inspiration, really, right? So coming from that place that they're coming from, which is inspiration, is very, very powerful. I think it's fantastic, and nothing bad to say about it.
I was just saying that in Nashville and gospel music and stuff, we're just constantly feeling like we're not measuring up to what's happening in LA or New York or whatever. So it's really encouraging to hear that.
Well, let me say this. We all feel the same way. All of us, like, I honestly, truly, have never made a good record. I fear the day that I go like, oh man, that's banging, I'm the shit. I think then it's over. That's it's only a theory, but I think it's correct. And it's that constant fight of like, God, all my stuff sounds like shit. How am I gonna make it better? You know, like, listen to that, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. I had one moment in my career, only one moment. I had recorded a big orchestra and 4 different drummers, right? And I recorded it the way that Glenn Johns taught me, 3 microphone technique, because I had to, there were so many instruments, right? And I went to Guitar Center like about a year later, and I went to the drum department, just kind of walking around looking to see what's going on. And I'm standing there on the screen, and they're playing this video, but I had forgotten I did the video, right? And I'm looking to it, listening to it, and going, oh, this drum sound amazing. Your drums sound like shit. Those sound fucking amazing, fucking moron, right? And all of a sudden it was like, I did that. I only had it for 20 seconds. Since then, it's all garbage as far as I'm concerned. I'm still trying to make a great record.
How do you feel about drum sampling and drum replacement? Do you think it's a necessity in modern music now?
I think that we have to keep in mind that in the same, when an artist, I always tell artists, when you sign a contract with a major record label, you've said to them, I'm going to make Norman Rockwells. I'm not making Mona Lisas, I'm making Norman Rockwells. So that's art for the masses. So to not pay attention, right, to what is happening at a commercial level is suicide, and it's stupid because you're not doing the end user, your customer, the right thing, right? You have to make it competitive, and if that's the sound, you have to chase it. The real talent is being a visionary that sees ahead of where it's going to go and finds the right time to pull the trigger to create that, and then it's like, okay, we're all going this way now, right? That's the real talent.
Can you kind of give a nickel tour on spatial imaging, especially with regard to like phasing and things like that, to make things sound much bigger than they are and create space in the mix when you have like a high channel count? Are there any tricks of the trade that you're willing to share in that regard?
Way too difficult question to answer in this environment. It's very, very complex. I'm not being rude or anything, it's just, I don't know how to answer it here without actually like taking you for a little school, you know, showing you things, and that's the only way I could really do it. I don't think I could probably really satisfy you.
2 more questions.
Desert Island compressor, or first ones that you would recommend, like young guys say, okay, you know what, I got this compressor, and then change everything.
Fairchild 670.
All right.
What are 3 tips that you would give to an engineer to keep in mind whenever going into any project?
First thing is to know really, really well the artist you're working with. Like really understand who they are, what they are, where they're going, where they should be going, and really having that connection with the best that you can. It's like extremely important because you're both driving the car effectively, right? That's one thing I would say. The second thing is like really, it's a difficult thing because we're in a business where we're not selling something else. You know, like I'm not selling my shoes or my coat. I'm saying I'm great. I'm selling what I do, right? It's kind of egocentric, really, at the base of what it is. And it's easy to your head to get big. It's very easy to go like, oh, I just had 3, #1 records, and I just did this and did that, and got 2 Grammys. Okay, guess what? The truth is, that song probably could have been mixed by 10 other guys and had a hit because the song was so damn great. So like, shut up. Because the truth is, innately you get the talent at birth. God gives you the ability. What you can be a little ego about, if it's going to be anything, is what you did with it. But it's not yours. You were given to it at birth. So second thing would be keeping the ego in control, right? And then the third thing would be like detail. Detail everything that you say, detail on the balance, detail on the mix, detail on how it's being printed, detail on how it's being labeled, detail. Really militant detail. Never steer you wrong, ever.
When you get like an artist that comes in and like on a daily mix session where you don't have the chance to get to know them at first, do you have any suggestions for kind of doing that as you go, or just kind of things that you can do to get the 2 birds done at the same time?
Well, keep in mind that they're the star. You're not the star. So if you can sort of like be a little bit meek, back it down a little bit, make them feel really comfortable. Make sure that your assistant or you who's getting them water or coffee, whatever it is, and then just start to develop a relationship and quickly, be toggling between doing the work and at the same time watching everything they're doing. Is their feet moving? Is it not moving? Are they uncomfortable? If they keep moving the couch, is it because they're underneath air conditioning? They don't think the mix is right. They don't know what to say. You have to be able to read them. Very, very important. Anyone can do that if you really pay attention to it.
About partially the mastering process, which I'm sure you often give off to a professional mastering person. But what I find is when you're combining analog outboard gear and digital plugins, such as isotope ozone, and then let's say you also have a mixing console, or even an analog mixing console, or even just an analog compressor before that or after that, when you do have to do your own mastering, or as far as what you know about professional masters, how do they get that all going at the same time so that, for example, you don't first have to hear just the analog compressor and EQ and print that, then you run the ozone. You want to monitor the whole chain, then you're dealing with all this latency and you're changing settings. Have you ever had to deal with stuff like that?
The ozone thing is I actually saw two of the guys from that company 2 days ago. I forgot where or how I ran into them. I called it ozotoping, because they're so complex that you kind of got to go like into a little trip, and you can get very lost. It's sort of like when Massenburg made those compressors that had timing and resistance, and you're like, give me LA2, like two knobs, right? But it's interesting. I think the way to answer that, maybe, again, you just asked like 10 questions in one, honestly, is that you have to have a vision for what you want it to be. And you got to know what those tools do and how they can either take you to that vision or take you off track. You have to be able to go like, no, I went too far, went too late. No. You need to know what they do, right? That's the best way to know to answer that.
Okay, well, any more? One last question? Anyone? All right.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I want to please give a warm round of applause for